Hello, and welcome to After Credit Reflection. My name is Nolan, and I am so glad that you're here. Today, I want to take a deep dive. I want to take a deep dive into a Christmas movie that many people watch over the holidays, and not many people want to take a deep dive into it. So, that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be taking a deep dive into my favorite Christmas movie, and I'm going to try to be unbiased about it. But if I let opinions slip, just know that they're opinions. The movie that I'm going to be deep diving into is going to be, wait for it, drumroll please, The Muppets Christmas Carol. That's right, my favorite Christmas movie has been revealed as Muppets Christmas Carol. Home Alone is a close second. I am excited to be deep diving into this movie. I think there's a lot of heavy-handed topics that we don't really talk about from that movie and from the Charles Dickens classic itself. I think that out of all the renditions that have ever come onto the screen, I think that The Muppets is probably the most authentic, and it's the one that makes you feel the best, right? With a thankful heart. Anyways, let's dive right into this. So, as I said, this is my favorite Christmas movie, and yes, there are going to be opinions that are kind of different than a lot of people's, especially on this movie. This movie is often praised for how lighthearted it is, and it's often praised for Michael Caine's portrayal of Scrooge, which I will get to that. But I think something we need to focus on is kind of the three spirits that visit Scrooge, which we'll cover in a little bit. But I think also what we need to nail down is the fact that this was the first movie that was made after Jim Henson's death in 1990. And this came out in 1992. It originally was going to include a song that was taken out for theatrical release. And it's often remembered as one of the best performances of this Charles Dickens classic Christmas novel. And it's just an amazing movie. It's a great adaptation, and I don't know what else to say about it. There's not much else to say. So, I've watched this movie a number of times. I think that it has the elements that you need for that that perfect story, you know, that perfect story that everybody strives for. You got a character who's grieving love, and so he turns that love into cold-heartedness for his money, and basically he he takes that and he uses his position of power and to basically take people's money, and if it if they don't agree, if they don't if they're not able to meet the quota, if they're not able to pay the bills, then they get kicked out, which is messed up, right? That is very much a messed up process of doing that. I think we can all agree on that. But Scrooge really is suffering from heartbreak, and we really see that in this movie when we go to the past and we see that Scrooge fell in love, but that he pushed the girl away for his business. And because of that, it made his heart break. And so his future self to his past self, or his present day self to his past self, is distraught seeing Belle and seeing all of that. I think kind of broke his heart again. And that is just amazing character development. And that's just the past. Like we see Scrooge, he was brought up and he was a businessman from the time he was like 10. I mean, that's amazing in and of itself. And the fact that he's so focused on financials and so focused on business that he doesn't stop to celebrate Christmas is something he learns when he's in the present, when he goes to the past, when he goes to the future. And it's an amazing way of storytelling that really hasn't been replicated in many stories that have been written in many books. And I just find that it's really cool to see that. Um, and Charles Dickens, when he wrote this, he didn't write it because like he didn't write it because he thought, oh, this is going to turn into a big thing. No, nobody writes a story and thinks, oh, this is going to turn into a big thing. Because if they thought that, why would they write it? And it would just be a mess, because they're like, well, I could put anything out. I could put anything out and it'll be gold because people love me. No, Charles Dickens wasn't doing that. Yes, he's a prolific author, but he didn't put out A Christmas Carol just to make sure that it appealed to audiences. He spent a month and a half writing A Christmas Carol, rewriting it, edits, everything, and he still managed to pull off one of the greatest Christmas stories to ever be told, to ever be written. And I think that it's just amazing that that happened. Now, I am getting excited because I do love this story. I do love the story of Scrooge. We have all been a Scrooge at some point in our lives. We've all been like, I just don't think that life is for me right now, you know? But then we look at the future and we see that we barely had an impact, and we think, oh, well, if that's my future, shouldn't I do something right now to change that? And Ebenezer learns that when he goes to the future. He learns the value of family from himself in the present. And what I love about the Muppets Christmas Carol is that it reflects that story. It reflects that. And I just love kind of the imagery of three ghosts that talk to him throughout the night. Technically, it's it's four, but when it comes to the main three ghosts of past, present, and future, that's the three that we're talking about. Now, do I think that the Muppets did a good job in telling this? Of course they did. The Muppets have always been good at that, been good at making it kind of this cheerful theme, making Christmas a loving, honest, charitable time. Love it. I love it so much. And also the fact that Gonzo and Rizzo are kind of the narrators of this kind of shows you a writer's perspective, telling the story as it goes along, and then also kind of building to this, what's it called? Building to this epic conclusion where they somehow have lived in this world, just nobody's noticed them, kind of being this overarching entity. And I just love that. I love it so much. And I think that this specific telling of A Christmas Carol is very reflective of a religious lifestyle. I I'm a Christian, and so I'm not afraid to admit that I'm scared of the future, and I'm scared of what I've done, and I'm scared of what I'm going to do. I just don't know. And so I'm like, well, I mean, I can't be worse than Scrooge, right? Well, we've all, as I've said before, we've all been a Scrooge. We just have to choose how to move forward from that. Anyways, no inspirational speeches from me, but I just noticed that this movie kind of reflects that. All right, let's talk a little bit about the characters more. First up, we got Scrooge being portrayed by Michael Caine. Sir Michael Caine, one of the best actors of both the 20th century and also the 21st century. This guy was so amazing, and he recalls this as one of his most favorite productions to work on was A Muppet's Christmas Carol. Tim Curry said the same thing about Muppets Treasure Island. And I just love that those actors have reflected on their time with the Muppets and said, yeah, that was one of my favorite roles that I played. Like, it's Sir Michael Caine we're talking about here. And he's saying, yeah, the one where I was with a bunch of puppets, that was my favorite one. Like, you could have chosen anything. He was in the original Italian Job. And this guy is like one of my favorite productions to work on was the Muppets. Also, fun fact, he asked Brian Henson, the director of Muppets Christmas Carol, he asked if he could portray Scrooge as if he were in a Shakespearean drama, which I think is a brilliant move as an actor. I think that's just amazing because to counteract the Muppets, he said it himself, to counteract the fun, loving part of the Muppets, he had to be serious about his role and so deep in his role. So that way you could see more of his character shine, which you do. You see it shine above the Muppet performances, which, yeah, you usually see in Muppet movies, but not like this. Not like this at all. Anyways, so Michael Caine as Scrooge is probably one of the best castings for Scrooge that there has been. I think that they probably could have. I don't think they could have changed anything about his performance. I think his performance is probably one of the best things we've seen. And I love being able to kind of reflect on that every year that I watch this. I think that it's definitely a performance that everyone should see at some point in their life, because it does kind of show this representation of humanity, and even the worst people doing the worst things can be brought back to this restoration. And I just thought that is very reflective of a lot of people today. And so I just loved it. I loved his portrayal so much. I think definitely worth the watch this Christmas if you have nothing else to do. If you got 2 hours, just watch Muppets Christmas Carol and then comment down below what you thought. It's available on Disney Plus, and the extended version is on Disney Plus as well. If you go to extras, you can hit the extended version, which includes the song When Love Is Gone, which was excluded from the theatrical release. Definitely check it out. I loved this movie and I loved all the characters. Let's reflect on another character, Bob Cratchit, played by Kermit the Frog, voiced by Steve Whitmire. Steve Whitmire does a fantastic job playing Kermit the Frog. He played Kermit the Frog from Henson's Death until after the Muppets had their own series in 2014. So pretty much almost 20 years, over 20 years of playing Kermit the Frog. And when he first started on A Christmas Carol, A Muppet's Christmas Carol, he was self-conscious about that. He was self-conscious about will he live up to Jim's legacy, and he did a fantastic job as Kermit the Frog. I thought that the puppetry was amazing. I thought the emotion was there. I would even argue that Kermit the Frog showed more emotion in this movie than he did in the previous Muppet movies, and that's crazy for me to say because I'm a huge fan of original trilogies when it comes to either Star Wars or Muppets. I love the original trilogy. But I do think that Kermit the Frog kind of has this depth here. And yes, he's playing a character, but he is still Kermit the Frog. So, yeah, I thought that like Bob Cratchit and Tiny Tim and just that entire family, I thought that that was played brilliantly, casted brilliantly. Um, I thought, as I said before, I think that Rizzo and Gonzo in this are casted perfectly because Gonzo has always kind of been this outcast, and for him to become this characterization of Charles Dickens telling this story, I thought that that was just really cool to see, especially on screen and talking to Rizzo and just their relationship because they kind of took over Muppet movies in the 90s, kind of being the leading Muppets in these movies. I did think that the only character who I thought should have deserved more screen time was Fozzie, but that's just because I am partial to Fozzie. Very big Fozzie fan. I did like Bean Bunny, one of my favorite Muppets after watching this movie so many times. So cute, so adorable, and just a sweetheart, you know? Just that just the type of sweet that, you know, it's like he's a bunny. He's like that big. And at the end he's carrying a giant turkey. Like it is so cute. Anyways, I thought that all of their contributions, especially the ghosts, like the Ghost of Christmas Past, used revolutionary puppetry um, to like to be able to look like that. They used something that was revolutionary. They used puppetry underwater to capture the spirit from the past, and I just thought that that was brilliant. I thought that that is probably one of the greatest things that the Henson Company has thought of in terms of puppetry. And if you don't think we still use puppetry in the industry, like if you don't think that Hollywood uses puppetry inside the industry, Mandalorian and Grogu, best example of how far we've come in puppetry. Just saying that. Anyways, so I've loved watching this movie. I love deep diving into it. The themes where um where Scrooge is kind of this mean guy. Everybody knows him as this mean guy, and so everybody's shocked when Christmas morning he is waking up full of joy and he gives 5 shillings to Bean Bunny to go get the turkey, and he greets his nephew. He greets his nephew's fiance, and with a bunch of joy, and his nephew can't believe it because the day before, Ebenezer Scrooge was saying humbug to Christmas and love. But now he's full of love and full of joy. So, yeah, this is definitely a 10 out of 10 movie. If you get the chance, you should watch it. Definitely recommend. I should probably get to bed before I start seeing the ghost of Christmas past. Yeah. Well, I hope that everyone has a fantastic holiday. I will be back in the new year in 2026 with a deep dive into one of the best movies to have released in 2025, F1. Yeah, that's right. I'm diving right into the race car of F1. All right. See ya.